1988. It was my second term as a teacher and youth theatre director at Oaklands Community School. And with Oaklands Youth Theatre, we just, in the past term, put on the production about Graham Salmon called Race to be Seen. It had been really successful, and it had proved my point that we can make our own theatre, develop our own stories, because in the back of my mind was something that I had wanted to do. And I'd wanted to do this because whilst we were at Edinburgh, one of the young people who was in the cast, I learned, was going through anorexia and was failing to get any help. I tried to do so from the health education people, and literally they didn't know what to do. The doctor didn't even know what to do. So I vowed to myself, right, this is something I'm going to try and do a production about, and at least put some information into schools, feeling that my position as someone who had now been published, I could get information out there. And I'd come across an organisation called the Eating Disorders Association, who put me on to Maureen Dunbar, who had written this book called Catherine, the story of a young girl who died of anorexia nervosa. Maureen was Catherine's mum, and Catherine had died, and it was a devastatingly sad tale. I bought the book and wrote to Maureen, and very, very quickly got a response, a lovely handwritten response from her. Dear Mark, thank you for your letter and for your comments about my book, Catherine. I'm very touched that you should want to use Catherine's life as a basis for a documentary play. You have my full permission to do so. There is, however, a film made by ITV and based on the book, which will be shown on all networks either at the end of June or early July. Maybe you'll have to claim clearance from then, and then you should, if you still wish to go ahead, you should. I'll speak to the person concerned and let you know his reply. Anything that can be done to highlight the danger and the anguish of anorexia is worthwhile. Should you decide or are able to go ahead with the play, I will be happy to help you with any background information you need. My best wishes to you and all at the Epping Youth Theatre, Maureen Dunbar. She went, she got permission, we were able to go ahead. I watched the film, it was gruelling. And Maureen's book provided basically the words. And she thought that I'd be doing it with this very experienced group from Epping, who by that point had done Race to be Seen and Too Much Punch for Judy. But I was in a new school with a group of young people. So here I am, very proud in my new Oaklands Theatre. And that was a picture taken by the Sunday Times, and which was an article that was done later on. I'm just going to read you, I did a year ago, this book about Hard to Swallow, and this is written by one of the cast members, and her reaction to being involved in this kind of tells you about the group. I was an enthusiastic teen who believed very strongly in the medium of theatre to make an impact on people's lives. It made perfect sense to me that Maureen Dunbar would allow us, an unknown entity with no track history of working together from a different socio-economic background, to be responsible for publicly portraying her story. I took her trust in our abilities for granted. As an adult, I cannot believe she agreed. I'm blown away by her braveness to do so, and the risk she took. I remember her saying her belief was that people close to Catherine's age, when she began to suffer from anorexia, would have more of a simpatico relationship with her daughter. I hope our ragtag group from Southampton, whose play seemed to coincide with the burgeoning general awareness of anorexia nervosa at that time, justified Maureen's faith in us. Sarah wrote some amazing things, and I talk about the play a little bit more. I'm going to mention them as well. Maureen came all the way from Croydon to speak to us in Southampton, and here she is at a very early meeting. That's Maureen there, and that's me sitting reading probably an early draft of the play. This is an early draft of the play. You can see it's big and long, and lots of crossings out and sticking and pasting from the original book. We cast Abigail as Catherine. What an amazing piece of casting she was. She was just the most stunning Catherine. And we were it was a lovely really happy group. That was the whole group who performed and developed the play. We wrote it. I tried to do it collaboratively, but I have to say that I had so many ideas about how it should be done that in the end, and also the version that we did, in the end, this was the beginning of me taking on the role of a writer and going away and editing it, and really putting it together myself. So it was too difficult for me having those strong opinions and kind of knowing what I was doing, whereas before I didn't, and here I did. But where the cast came into their own was in assisting me, and that's always been the case, assisting me with the direction. And that's Catherine in her little area, and you can see an amazing thing here, Catherine and the kind of ghostly effect of her and her desperateness. Fantastic photograph. All the photos by Debbie Giles' dad, Bill Giles. He was one of the parents and took some amazing photographs of us. In the cast, mostly year 9s. I think Sarah was year 10 and these two had left school. Deanne was in a previous production. And I went back to Epping to get a poster design. So it was originally called Catherine, and that was John Rowley's poster design. And as you can see, we took it to Edinburgh. So, you know, real confidence. From January through to September, we were rehearsing to get it to go on at Edinburgh. And there is the review from the Times Ed supplement that was done. And I'm going to read you a little bit of the review, because for a first production by a group of year 9s and a couple in year 12, it was quite incredible. This is Mick Martin from the Times Educational Supplement. A powerful and often harrowing chronicle of Maureen Dunbar's long and ultimately unsuccessful fight against anorexia. Its examination of anorexia and its ability to raise our awareness of this condition defines it as an important piece of work. How lovely for this little group from lowly Southampton to be called important. There are mature, confident performances from the principal actors, led by Abigail Penny, with a well-sustained, moving interpretation of the title role, which is particularly impressive in its avoidance of overstatement. It should be compulsory viewing for anyone connected with the care or education of teenage girls. Wow, we were so excited by this. That's the Edinburgh Fringe programme for the year we went. And this is a picture of all of us, party mood after the production at Edinburgh. And you can see here Matt joined us from Epping Youth Theatre, and he came in and in our flat did some fire eating. Quite amazing. And I'm going to mention one little thing, because the billy goats are often referred to, and it was lovely that in the very first review, it was the local newspaper review, this was an extract. Innovative and imaginative, shocking and disturbing, includes an original adaptation of the Billy Goat's gruff story which acts as bookends to the play, performed marvellously by this energetic and talented ensemble. I wanted the Billy Goats there to be a completely kind of left field thing to come in at people. And people knew that the production was going to be about anorexia. So their first thing that they saw was a group of Billy Goats. That wasn't what they were expecting. I wanted to confuse them, and it did. But at the end of the play, when they return, they understand why it was there. And that kind of education process as a theatre and education piece is really, really important for me. And it's also important to say that I'd started in Hard to Swallow to write some of the scenes. So some of those dialogue scenes are not words from the real people, which they all were in Too Much Punch for Judy, where I got Chris Caton and Judy together, and they together would come up with that scene, and it was literally how they remembered it between them. But in this, I can remember scripting, sometimes from improvisation, like we'd done in Blackout, but sometimes me at home, lying down on the floor, always writing lying down on the floor. And the scene, for example, with Anna and the Scales was a mixture of improvisations and me writing. So it was a kind of a blurred verbatim documentary play. All the words were from the script, from the book, Maureen's book. And the other thing is those billy goats. We were originally going to have a billy goat scene, a scene from the story, a billy goat scene, a scene from the story. And there were so many billy goat scenes that the night before, or the week of the opening of the production, we performed it, and it lasted, I think, for just over 2 hours. I said we've got to cut it. So that little billy goat scene that appears at the beginning of the play now was developed from all of our billy goat scenes and condensed using two-touch theatre method, which we'd used a lot in the play, using only 2 words, like two-touch football. A little group went in and worked on that bit and came back, and pretty much what they did that night is what you see in the final script. But whilst I was writing the book that I referred to earlier, I also discovered the billy goat scenes, and they are now available as a download. They're really worth getting. I've called it Crossing the Bridge, the unseen billy goat scenes from Hard to Swallow. And it's a great way to introduce the script to young people. One group can do the billy goat scene that actually appears, and then other groups in the class can do these other scenes. They really are worth having a look at, because they shed some light on how we saw the development of the billy goat scenes. And for example, the little home that she used at first, we had a maze. There's some really interesting little things there. Hard to Swallow didn't end at the end of Edinburgh, because the next year we had other plans for it, and those other plans developed in a way that I could never ever have imagined. So we'll be back. I'll be back to talk to you about that sometime in the future.